Hej alla och välkomna till ett nytt avsnitt till vår dialog. Och ikväll har vi med oss Wendy Boyd Isacsson. Hon är en vän, hon är en kollega för att hon är också lärare. Och det som vi har gemensamt, jag och Wendy, är att vi har både rötter utomlands. Jag är från Italien och Wendy från en stad i England som sen kommer Wendy att berätta precis var det ligger och så vidare. Och så det kommer att bli en hel del engelska ikväll. Så vi hoppas att ni stannar kvar och hänger med i alla fall. För att vi kommer att prata om våra egna upplevelser, så jag kommer också prata lite om mig i start av pandemin. Hur har vi upplevt skillnaden mellan Sverige och andra länder och de informationerna som kom från andra länder. Och vi kommer också att ta upp jättemycket om vad händer nu i skolorna i Sverige och vad är det som är de åtgärderna som vi skulle önska oss att det fanns. Så I give the word to you, Wendy. Can you present yourself?
Hi, I'm Wendy Boyd Isacsson, and I come originally from England. I've lived in Sweden for a number of years now. I teach maths at a Swedish högstadiet. Jag pratar svenska, men det blir mycket lättare för mig att uttrycka mig på engelska. So I will speak English. If there's any strange words, then I will go back to Swedish and translate them. I come from the northeast of England, which is a town called Grimsby, but I didn't really live there very much because I'm an army brat. My dad was in the army, and we just moved around. So I've lived in Singapore, Hong Kong, Germany. So like a moving Little Britain all around these countries. So I was, that's basically about me, my background.
So you, in the beginning of the pandemic, start of 2020, you were working. Where you were working at?
I was working at a very big Swedish comprehensive, like a communal run school, where we have almost 1,000 kids from the age of 0 up to 9th grade. In the beginning, then it used to be only 4th to 9th grade, but then it's grown since then. But it's basically the same school, same building. So big comprehensive, lovely school, great colleagues, great kids. And I was shocked by the pandemic, and it was just before we were supposed to go to Japan to actually go and meet our son. So I was sort of listening to the news in Sweden, and our son was living in Japan, and we were about to go there. And here it was like, you don't need a mask, everything's safe, it's not going to come to Sweden. And it was just before we left that we started getting these pictures from Italy that started to scare us a little bit. And we were like, should we still go? And it was like, well, there's 8 cases in Japan, a country of like 200 million people or 120 million people. And then there is 8 cases in Sweden. So it felt safer to be in Japan than it did to be in Sweden. So we went away on holiday and spent time with our son. And then we were so shocked because in Sweden, it was like no masks, there was nothing. And even in the very, very early stages in Japan, everybody started wearing a mask. All of the chemists had sold out. There were no masks available. And there was masks on little children. And then I started to get very curious and what's going on here.
So it was some kind of shock seeing Japan so well prepared, see almost everyone, also the children, wearing mask.
Yeah.
Just in the start.
Just in the start. And just after we left, which was at the end of February, Japan went pretty much into a full lockdown. So my son at university, they were not allowed out of the house. Unless it was for 1 hour a day exercising. Schools closed, shops closed, everything closed. And the only thing you could do was go and buy food. And that
this
was
is big in a city
Yeah.
as Tokyo, for example. Many
absolutely-
millions people living there. Almost a country, Tokyo itself, but everyone inside just
And
keep
at
calm.
the time, my son was living together with his girlfriend in a room that was 12 square meters.
Oh, this was the first time you started to think something is wrong in Sweden.
Yeah.
I was aware that something was wrong in the first beginning, because before the virus arrived in Italy, the Italian government were starting to take measures. And they started to plan for tourism, to calm down the tourism, to check the people on the airports, and so on. It was some kind of problem in the North Italy, that we have a lot of Chinese people working in the textile industries for the alta moda, and they have a lot of silk fabrics, for example. That was the period that Wuhan had locked down, but it also was after the moon festivity in China, and many Chinese people were traveling for the fest,
Chinese New Year. Yeah.
the holidays, and they went back from China to Italy. And then when they were back to the work, that was the problem, because they tried to check everyone, but we speak about 120,000 people working in North Italy. So there were a lot, and many people took the plane not direct to Italy, Rome or Venedig or so on. They took the plane to Germany or to England and back in Italy. It was not possible to check everyone. And that started the huge infection in North Italy. And it was traumatic, because the Italian government, they locked down everything, and they start to show a picture of dying people, and they started to say, this is huge. Don't think that this is a kind of flu. This is huge. These things, we don't know what this is, but this thing kill people. And we don't know what is the consequences of everything. So this was some kind of shocking, as you say, seeing the Italian government came out to say we have to keep together, because this is very dangerous. This is not a regular infection. This is a very, very dangerous thing. You have to be afraid, because there is reasons to be afraid. And at the same time, you know what people was saying in Sweden? They were saying that
Don't worry, it's not dangerous. It's not going to come here. But then when we've seen the emails that have been sent from the health authority in Sweden, I mean, that's what really shocked me the most. It's like when they were discussing, well, what are you doing here? Are you doing herd immunity strategy? And on the TV, they were saying, no, we're not doing herd immunity strategy. But then these emails pop up between Anders Tegnell and Pete Tull saying, well, yeah, we've decided that herd immunity strategy is the only way to go. So I just felt extremely deceived by the authorities here. So I stopped believing what was coming out of the Swedish health authorities and started looking, okay, what is UK saying? What is the America saying? What are the other countries around the world saying?
We have comment from our public. They say intressant in Italien att det visar kistor medan Sverige har aldrig gjort detta. Aldrig egentligen på detta laddade sätt har pratat om det som gått förlorade. Ja, alltså i Italien har man visat folk som, inte folk som dog, men i alla fall, de visade kistor. Och de visade militärerna som tog hand om kistorna. För att det räckte inte längre med vanliga begravningsbyrå. Och de har visat de här lastbilarna som gick igenom städerna i tystnad under natten, lastbil efter lastbil fulla med kistor. Och det var ganska chockerande.
And maybe in a way that woke up the risks to the Italian people. I know that we saw a little bit of that on the BBC, where, you know, the BBC was publicizing a lot of what was happening in Italy, and there was a big debate. And I felt that the debate was more open in England than it was in Sweden. Because in Sweden you heard, no, we're not going for herd immunity, but anybody who comes from the Italian region, they can just go to work. No, you can't be infected before you have any symptoms. So just go to work. Everything's fine. Denmark stopped the Eurovision Song Contest in being held in the Bigden, but in Sweden, no, we filled the globe. And then afterwards, we're like, oh, well, it spread a lot in Sweden. Well, no, really? What a not surprise, you know. So they're saying that it wasn't a herd immunity strategy, and then they keep on doing things that say, but this is everything you're doing here epidemiologically is going to create an enormous spread. And that's when I realized that, hey, the authorities are not going to protect you or your family. So Wendy, this is down to you to do what you can to save your family.
And because you speak about the information, when did you start speaking about COVID in school?
In school, to my pupils?
To your pupils or your colleagues?
Yeah, well, very early on, I understood that speaking to my colleagues is not something that you do, because in Sweden, the most important thing is to conform. So if the health authority says it isn't dangerous and that masks will increase the spread, then you believe the health authorities. Schools open have to be very important, and I agree that open schools have to be very important for the children and for the pupils. And but I wanted safe schools. I wanted safe schools to be open. I saw the measures that they were putting in place in the UK. And it was encouraging at least masks on children. It was testing every week on a Monday and a Wednesday. Every child, every teacher was tested. Teachers were supposed to test every day. And it didn't mean that the schools were then responsible for testing. It meant that the children tested on a Monday morning before they came to school, and on a Wednesday morning before they came to school. And any other day they had symptoms, they were given, like, here you go, here's a pack of 20 tests. If you feel that you have any symptoms, if you're not sure if it's a cold or if it's COVID, test. And if you're uncertain with one test, then you take a second. So there was this generosity of spreading as much as you could, so that people were able to test themselves. And then if somebody in the class got sick, initially the whole class was put on lockdown for 2 weeks. And then, of course, the children were losing a bit too much school time. So then it was people that were close to John the week that the day that he found out he was positive. So if you know that you were spending a lot of time sitting close to John or talking a lot with John, because back at this time, we weren't absolutely certain it was aerosol. Many people thought that back then that it was mostly droplet spread, because it wasn't spreading at the same rate as the flu was. So there was just such an enormous disparity, difference between what Sweden was doing and what UK was doing, and it just didn't feel right. So my pupil, I started wearing a mask fairly early on. I started with these, the simple ones.
Yes, everyone started with this.
I changed them every day, but then it started getting quite expensive. So then I went over to buying my old cloth masks. And, yeah,
I remember that.
Filter here with carbon dioxide, and I ironed them and washed them every day. And I bought 10 and I washed them, and I wore them at school, and I changed them several times during the day. And then as COVID got more and more contagious, I started going up. So when I was vaccinated, but my pupils weren't, then I went over to an FFP2, which, if this one protects possibly 20-25%, this one possibly nothing, maybe 10 if you're lucky. Then I went up to the FFP2 mask, which it's easy to wear, and it's quite discreet. You look a bit like a twat. You look like you're wearing a coffee filter.
It's very, very beautiful too. Many teenagers loves black, and this is some kind of mysterious mask. So I know that my child loves that one.
Yeah. So this
because it's black.
Super easy to put on. I never touch the mask once it's on. I only take it off by the loops, and it's so difficult for me to learn. Oh, spray it alcohol gel on your hands before you put it on. Oh, take it on before you take it off, and afterwards, and then put it in a bag. And what I did with my masks was I put them in a paper bag, and I have them in the back of my car Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then I could rotate them. So this type of high quality mask, you can basically rotate them as often as you want, as long as you don't put alcohol gel on the mask. Just keep them, and they can last several months by doing that.
Yes, you can buy that in a normal apoteket.
Yeah, and then as it got more and more contagious, then I went up. Then I went up to this type of mask, which is an FFP3 mask. And I started wearing this after my pupils were vaccinated. So this one is super easy to breathe. And it's got a really, really good tight silicone seal here. So this one probably, if this one protects to possibly 90%, then this one is 99, I would guess. This is, you can hear me fairly well. I talk louder when I'm wearing my mask, but it's really comfortable to wear and easy to breathe. It's not very comfortable after 5 hours of teaching. But I am one of the few people in my school who hasn't had COVID, as far as I know, unless I've had it asymptomatically. But I do.
How your pupils, how do they react to you wearing mask?
Well, they ask first. They ask, "Are you an anti-vaxxer? Is that why you wear a mask instead to protect yourself?" And I say, "No, I've had all of my doses, but I'm allowed to have." But it's I have a mother-in-law that I'm very concerned about. She has, some sort of type of leukemia cancer that I don't want to be responsible for her dying. And I do know that there's a very high risk working in schools. But also, I have had a burnout and experienced already a lot of brain fog after that experience, not long before COVID started. So I was just on my way back into school and into the class when this happened with COVID. And I just thought, oh my God, if I'm to get even more burnout than I have now and brain fog, because I'm unlucky enough to get long COVID. Because in Sweden, everybody was saying you can't get long COVID, and it's super, super rare. And I was reading the CDC guidelines, and they were saying 1 in 5. And I'm like, super rare.
Because that what you say is very important, because we people from other countries and teachers from other countries, we have two different guidelines in the brain. From outside, we have the Swedish guidelines, and they can all say it's it's just a flu. You can take that. You will survive. You don't have so many issues, so you will survive. And from the hand, you have your mother country that say, no, 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 no. This kind of virus can kill you, even if you are healthy, even if you have 1 dose, 2 doses, and you have to protect yourself, you have to protect your children, you have to protect your pupils, and you can, and this is a moral question, you have to protect your country too, because when you protect yourself, you protect your country too, so you have to be so solidaric in some way. So you have this thing from one side and the other thing from another side, and this kind of dystopic situation. As a teacher, you have to respond from inside to the Swedish government because you are a tjänsteman. It does mean that you work for the Swedish government, and you have to mediate the words from the Swedish and the values from the Swedish government. From other things, you have your mother country, and they say the science say like this, that is airborne, that you have to put a mask, that is becoming more and more infectious. So we have the science, and another government say one thing, and the government in Sweden said another thing. Said this is not just this topic, it's just very, very problematic, because you are in front of your pupils and you have to explain what they have to do to defend themselves from COVID. You can lie and say, okay, you can just go and take the COVID, because it's not like that, that's not like that. So this is also a moral question. It's not so simple.
No, it isn't a very simple question. And my pupils did ask, quite a few times, or they, some people, well, oh, you're afraid of COVID. And I would be very clear that, no, I'm not afraid of getting COVID. The illness itself, if it's like the flu, give me flu any day over COVID. I said, what I'm concerned about is what the COVID virus will do to my body long term. And the more I read about the damage it could do to the different organs of the body, the brain, the heart, the lungs, the liver, the kidney, the blood vessels, the neurons, the more I read about the science of it. And I haven't read all the articles myself, but I'm in a couple of COVID action groups. One is yours, of course, but there's another one called the World Health Network. And they have some really good specialist professors, doctors, epidemiologists discussing what the latest research has said, and they summarize it in such a good way. And I just feel that it's been able to be a good guideline to me. You feel very, very the odd one out in Sweden by even having this opinion and also daring to share it and say it. And we've been involved in writing a couple of articles in the newspapers where I've been advocating safe schools, a safe environment for the children. At the same time, I in front of my pupils and to their parents, I say, this is my choice. This is my choice to protect myself and to protect my family. And everybody understands if you have a close relative who is at very high risk, that you're trying to do what you can to protect them.
We have a question from Christian, and he asks if we work in a private school or in a public school. Do you work in a private or public, Wendy?
Well, in English, of course, those two are both mean private schools. So a public school in English means private too.
Okay.
So no.
Okay, but
yeah.
But
so in American, it's different. American private is private and public is for everybody. But I work in a large comprehensive school, and a comprehensive is always run by the community or the council or the government. I would wish that schools were run by the government, all of them. But
jobbade kommunalt. När covid kom jobbade jag i gymnasiet och sen jobbade jag efteråt 6 månader i grundskolan kommunalt.
Yeah.
Men efteråt, sista sträckan har jag inte jobbat alls. Delvis för att ta hand om föräringen och delvis för att jag håller på att motbilda mig. Att fortfarande inom ramen om skolan så jag ska bli en bättre lärare förhoppningsvis. Men jag har alltid jobbat i kommunala skolor.
Ja, och jag jobbar kommunala skolor.
Kommunal. But it's not so huge difference between kommunala skolor and friskolor. I believe it's in the association we didn't see a huge difference.
No, I worked a number of years in a private school as well, and I still have a lot of contact with my old colleagues, and I don't think that there's any difference there. There's no masking. There's been a lot of infection going around.
Here we have some from Tobias. Tobias say, you feel like an immigrant in Sweden. That is how I a native feel. So there are a lot of people native in Sweden starting to think that they don't belong to Sweden anymore.
Yeah. And I think that was the biggest, shock for me as a person. I mean, I've lived in this country many years, soon after I graduated university, I moved to Sweden. I built my family here. My kids are more Swedish than they are English. And I've always loved this country and their lifestyle, and my family has come over here and they've loved it. Oh, we understand why you moved to Sweden. And it's almost been like a utopia. Wow, what a place to live. You can go on maternity leave, you can have children, you can still have your career, all of the things that you can't do in many countries, fabulous childcare. And then suddenly COVID came and the dichotomy of what was going on here, saying one thing and doing another, reading these emails that were obvious of what their strategy was, and then on TV giving interviews and say, no, that's definitely not the strategy. And I'm feeling like we had to actually be a detective to find out what the truth was quite upsetting for me. It's not what I would have expected from this country.
Yes, this is one kind of thing that I also reacted in the beginning, because when the Italian lockdown started, and it was a huge or very quickly lockdown also in schools, because they couldn't do anything at all in school in that moment. There was not possibility to organize in another ways. So the first thing was that send everyone home, and we will see what we can do after. And then they started after a month to reorganize the work, and they started to give the mask, the first mask, chirurgic mask, to the children. And then there was the FFP3, P2, P3, and they started to work a lot on the hair quality, hair hygiene. Okay, I can show also the last study from Italy. And you see, they still work on this issue. Ventilation, for example, was fundamental. And they started to, you see that also very, very little children has a mask, and this is FFP2 mask, and they have mask all the day in schools. So it was quite a huge work with hair hygiene. so air ventilation, mask, open the windows, check the filters, air condition, check how many people are in one room, check how the air moves in the room, or so on and so on. And they are continuing this kind of work. This is not the end. Now they don't have mask anymore in schools, and that I think is very is not so good, because there are a lot of children in Italian school, and the school is very is too much children for the buildings, the school building. But they decide to put down the mask, but they are still working with air and air condition and so on. This kind of work is continuing, and they check the children. They don't have to stay at home 10 days anymore when they are sick, but they continue to check and test, not just the sick people, but also everyone around. And when they have a case of COVID in a class, they put back the mask for all the classes.
And they have a regular test and trace then
and they have regular test and trace, and it's very it works very well for tourist also. You will trace the also as tourist. And we went to I was in Italy last week, and we have to check in the hotel, and they ask us a lot of questions, because they have to know who you are, where you are from, and in case something happened, and they have to check you back, who you meet in this building and so on. So the trace is working, not as huge as was in the beginning, but is continuous, and I believe they will continue to check. Even if the government is now different, they have a new people in charge, and they don't believe in COVID and in science as the old government. But I believe that the university is very strong in Italy, the university system, and they had a lot of scientific ground in the university, so they will react if something happen, and they check a lot. So this is what I was thinking, is that when we started with the pandemic, and was after the Italian lockdown, I went to the fackföreningen,
the unions,
unions, and I asked what was they thinking to do to protect me, because I was thinking, okay, they will protect the children in any case. I don't have to be worried about the children. They will be protected. I have to protect myself as a worker. So I didn't ask about the children, really. It was very stupid, I admit. But I asked about myself and what they were thinking to do. And they answered me that I should not speak about COVID yet, because it could be not good for the workers. They can be upset, they can be worried, they can be afraid, and to spread some kind of these feelings in the workplace is not welcome in Sweden. And it was already locked down in Italy. And I was thinking, okay, this is insane. We have to be protected in some way. We have to prepare, because I know that when the COVID is in the country, it's very difficult to organize people because everything is so quickly. So we have to ask those government to protect us. But it's not, it was not so welcome.
I experienced the same as well when I asked the union, and also the work environment agency, what are you going to do? And it was just, we're only going to follow the recommendations, and the recommendations are no masks, just increase your ventilation, put a bit of alcohol gel in the classroom, and that's supposed to be enough to protect you. And I realized that there was no way that was going to be enough to protect you. I mean, we were told kids don't infect. Once you've had it, you'll get herd immunity, and then we'll be protecting everybody faster. And then more and more reports started coming where you get it twice, you get it 3 times, and it just felt so off. Or the advice that we were getting, it was so contrary to what was happening in UK. Because UK at the same time as Sweden, both UK and Sweden decided, well, let's just let this rip. We'll let it rip. We'll infect everybody fairly quickly. We'll try and protect the vulnerable. And then we will see that once we've infected everybody, that we'll have herd immunity. And the UK was very honest, and they sort of said, well, we decided to go for herd immunity until this report came out from the University of London, the Imperial College, I think it was, that said, okay, if you do this, we're talking hundreds of thousands of deaths, if not millions, in UK. And so the English government backed, and then the infection rate and the death rate started to increase exponentially. And so then they did lockdowns, and they did 2 major lockdowns, I think, 3 months each, where schools went over to learning. And I was talking to my English teacher friends there and said, well, what happened in your school? And it was like, well, before lockdown, the pupils were allowed to wear masks in the classroom, but the teachers weren't. But the teachers then had to wear masks in the corridor, and the pupils had to wear masks in the corridors. So there was these different things there. They were so worried about the teachers not being able to be heard properly if they were wearing masks. But at the same time, they were testing everybody. They were isolating. They were trying to keep schools and children and members of staff safe. But the unions were pushing very, very hard in UK. They were actually measuring and saying, look, 6 times higher chance that a teacher gets infected at their place of work compared to other people in the same community. And they were really pushing back at the government to make schools safe. So I don't know if you know, but schools in Glasgow in Scotland, every single school will now have one of these carbon dioxide meters where the teacher is able to see, and you can see that this is actually quite high at the moment, 1,449. This is how high it gets with just me being in the room in this closed bedroom. There's just a small valve ventilation up at the corner. So that means that 2% of every breath I'm inhaling is my own exhaled breath, which is fine when it's just me in a room, because of course I'm just breathing my own breath. But imagine that instead you are 24 children and you're getting this carbon dioxide rate, and you're not aware of it in Sweden because nobody's measuring it. I put this meter in my classroom on my desk every day, and I record the carbon dioxide level that I have. I open the windows when it starts to get high. I keep a check on the carbon dioxide level, and I can. This machine actually sends an image to my phone where I can upload the whole day's data. I can see what's been going on.
Can you show me your picture?
Yeah, I can. Actually, it was All Saints Day yesterday, so I really wanted to go to the church. And my father is buried here in Sweden, and I wanted to go to the service. And so this was me sort of in the afternoon. This is in the car with my husband, and a short drive. And then I went into the church. And when I got into the church, it went up drastically to 2,000 parts per million. So then I went out in the foyer because I really would have liked, I'm wearing my mask and everything. I'm wearing, the full PAPA. But so I'm in the foyer, but even in the foyer, within 2-3 minutes, the level was up at 2,500 parts per million. And now we're talking.
So this one is a church. So
this
we
is in the
speak
church.
about a huge building.
Yeah. So a
with
massive,
high
with really
walls.
high ceilings. I would say that it was a massive church. I would probably say there was about 30 people in there. When I went in, the level was already at almost 2,000. As I was leaving, it was going up to 3,500. And so I can record all this data on my machine. I can look at it whenever I need to. So I think
we speak about the church. So for how many people inside?
Yeah,
50,
probably 40
50 people. So when we speak about a classroom, we speak like 32 people in a little room.
In a little room. The difference is, of course, there's no ventilation in a church. So I actually work in a fairly newish building at school. And so usually in my classroom, it doesn't go much over 1,000 parts per million. But if I go to the dining hall to eat, then it's significantly higher. So I don't eat in the dining hall. I don't eat at school. I don't drink coffee in school. And I just keep an eye on the carbon dioxide level.
Yeah, this kind of coal dioxide, which is an apparatus. There are a lot of them.
Different ones. This is called the Aranet 4. This particular machine. I've ordered it from America, and it is the best machine out there on the market. If it's this is extremely reliable.
Many schools in USA, they're starting to have those kind of machine in classrooms.
Yeah,
because the parents buy those machines and send in the school also, because this is quite a difference also, that if you are in Italy, if you are in the United States, if you are in Spain, you can buy something like that and give this as a present to the school and say, okay, put this in the classroom. I don't care about the money. You can use this is a kind of present from me to the school. Stop. But if you are in Sweden, it's very difficult to buy, for example, an air cleaner or
this is only telling you might have a problem when it comes to carbon dioxide level. If this goes up to like I've been on an aeroplane with it, and it was up at 4,500 parts per million, which that means that 10% of it, between 5 and 10% of every breath I'm inhaling is somebody else's exhaled breath. So that's major. So this one's only telling you that you could have a problem if somebody around you has COVID. They're exhaling aerosols and you're going to be breathing them in. But if you want to reduce the amount of COVID in the classroom, then we need something like a HEPA filter, which, the New York State, they bought thousands of them already in the summer of 2021 and installed them all. You had to have 2 HEPA filters in every classroom because they actually remove 99.7% of all aerosols. It's really good if you're allergic as well, but it removes the aerosols from the classroom. And they're really not that expensive to make or to buy. We're talking a couple of thousand kronas, which is, that's a fraction of what they're buying for one child for one school computer. You change the filters there once every 6 months or something like that. And we're talking low cost here. And we're talking massive prevention of spreading the aerosols.
The spreading of the virus cost a lot to society in any case. So people in the healthcare cost a lot of money So it's better to buy an HEPA filter than send people to the hospital. So this is quite some kind of good investment for the prevention of the cost also of the COVID. I don't, and the problem is that if you are a parent or a teacher, you can have some kind of difficulties if you want to buy and send one filter or mask or
there was a case of that this week, wasn't there? There was a parent who took in 2 HEPA filters that he had bought privately, and the headmaster went in the same day and stopped the units being used and said that they wasn't allowed in Sweden. And I don't know,
yes.
Whereas what we should be doing is we should be putting in 2 HEPA filters in every classroom, and we should be looking at the airflow and where's the best place to put them. I mean, I've always felt fairly self-conscious about the fact that I'm the one who's the teacher. I'm the one having to talk a bit louder because I'm wearing a mask. I'm the one who's going to be spreading aerosols. And that has been one of the biggest concerns for me. It's not so much as about me getting it. I do feel fairly safe in my mask, but it's the thought that I might have it, and I know that I'm contagious 2 days before I get any symptoms, and I could give it to one of my pupils who may be vulnerable, who may have a parent or a grandparent who's vulnerable, and I would feel extremely devastated if I knew that I'd actually, led to somebody else's suffering or death or long COVID, not only mine.
This is very important that because we teacher, we have 32 pupils, 25 pupils, but we don't know if one of those pupils has some kind of illness, chronic illness, or something that can be in risk groups or something like that. And when it happened, you are the adults, and maybe you spread the virus, you killed your pupil, and this is terrible. This can be devastating. I should have some difficulties to continue to work, knowing that I was the cause of my pupil's death. And this week was a very bad week in Sweden because we have one more death in children. So maybe you can show the picture now, because we have to see and we have to show what happened.
Yes.
Okay.
Sadly, we now have on the 3rd of November, 13th of October, one youngster.
Yes. And yes, we have a new death. We don't know the exact age of the child. We know that it's between 10 and 19. So we can say teenager.
Yeah.
And the problem is that this statistic, the children death statistic, is we have some kind of problem to analyze that, because often they change the statistic.
So we can see, the very first child here on the 18th of April was removed from the statistics. So that's a -1 day after. So these negative, that where children are removed, we don't know which particular child is removed, but there's quite a high percentage being removed from the statistics.
And this is not sure why it happened and which kind of guidelines make the folk health mediator remove the cases, because we have guidelines from the World Health organization about how to consider a death from COVID. Who is the COVID death?
Yeah.
But we don't follow
No.
those guidelines because they say that we have to include all the suspicious cases.
But isn't most of the cases that we report in Sweden, it's only those children that died within 30 days of a positive test as well? So we don't know how many children died 2 weeks later after the 30 days was up. Because we haven't seen. I mean, imagine that a child gets infected and then they're in hospital and they die at 50 days instead of at 30. Then if the doctor said it was COVID, we would expect there to be +1 occasionally, but we don't see any plus in the Swedish statistics.
Precise. This is a quite problem with the young people because young are strong. It takes a lot to a young person to die. You have really children fight for their life. They can fight also 2 months before they died. I mean, we don't speak about elderly people, 83, 93, maybe already very sick or something like that. Also, many of those people are sick in other ways, but they fight because the body of the child are strong. So this is quite problematic that we don't have statistics, that we don't have statistic enough about children, not about children with dying, not about the children with post-COVID, not about other problems, or this is quite a problem. Children about diabetes, for example. Many countries are already speaking about diabetes in children. Are becoming a problem as yes,
but a lot of they were discussing around Christmas time, was it not, that there was a strange liver disease that started to appear that wasn't appearing before, and this is what I think that this concerns me, because when you listen to the experts on COVID, and they are saying, well, the chance of you getting long COVID or long-term illnesses, it increases for every infection that you get. And that's what worries me most. It's like, okay, Sweden was maybe optimistic in the beginning, thought that once they got herd immunity, it would go over. But what we're seeing now is that our pupils are being infected with COVID once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. And there seems to be no stop as the virus mutates more and more. And I just wonder what it's doing to their little bodies. After 3 or 4 COVID infections with absolutely no protective measures in school, and it does really scare me for the next generation. We've always seen that every new generation usually lives longer and healthier than the previous one. Better food, better diet, and at the same time as we've got this environmental catastrophe that we're creating at the moment, we're living in a country that's decided to do nothing to protect children from a disease that we know can seriously affect organs of the body and hide in cells and find its way to our brain and to our lungs and different organs of the body, and pretty much remain there dormant to wake up again. There are a number of scientists who are saying that there could be, I mean, it's not the same as HIV, it's not a sexually transmitted disease, but it does seem to have a lot of mechanisms similar. It's an RNA virus, and it does seem to have a lot of mechanisms similar to HIV, where it can lie dormant in your body and then seriously affect your health in the future. And this is one of the reasons I'm really trying to do what I can to protect myself and to protect my pupils.
And now I think that we have to hand this time speaking about what we say to children, because I know, for example, in South Korea and Japan and Vietnam. I have some friends, and the families receive papers from the school explain what you just said, that COVID is dangerous. Even USA has some kind of efficient papers and brochure that displaying that this is the look, parents, this is just quite a problem. We have a problem, and this is the kind of problem that the children can have, and the children receive information from the school in a way that they can understand, depending by the age and the situation, and they maybe it's not everything that is explained to the children, but is explained the most important things, that you have to protect yourself, that is not a flu, you can be sick in post-COVID is serious. So this is quite a lot of information that we give to, not in Sweden, but other countries give it to the children. And teacher in school have to answer to the question from the children in a way that is scientific, not just to calm down the children, but to explain what is the problem and what they can do, to empower the children, to make them conscious about the responsibility of everyone, and make them better to defend themselves. But in Sweden, we have a problem to speak to the children.
But what we're facing nowadays is that there is, there's just so much. Everybody thinks that COVID is over. So the children, like, Wendy, why are you still wearing your mask? COVID is over. Don't you know that yet? And even a policeman actually asked me why I was still wearing a mask, because COVID was over. And I just feel like the level of misinformation, they're saying, oh, it's milder now. There's very little data that it's milder. In fact, that it seems to be producing just as much higher risk of long COVID as it was before. And I mean, I know a number of people that are suffering really, really badly from long COVID.
Yes. This is a huge problem from long COVID or post-COVID or other problems that the next generation can have. I wonder if they will ask us account for what we do to them now, because they will they will be adults in the future, and they will ask us why we didn't protect them, because we knew. And this is some kind of problematic, because we don't speak with them, and we don't give them a chance.
No. Well, I will continue to fight for the rights of children to be vaccinated, for free choice, for safer classrooms with HEPA filters, with carbon dioxide meters, encouraging to wear masks based on science, not by forcing, but by telling them, if you tell somebody that you're not only protecting yourself, but you could be protecting somebody in your family by 95-98% with this, and what the real risk of long COVID is. 1 out of 5 people means, okay, in this class of 25, then 5 of you might actually have some serious long COVID from one infection, and that it would increase by 2 infections, and that chance would increase by 3 infections. So I don't talk about this very much to my pupils, because they don't ask me. They ask me things that are everyday to them. Why are you wearing a mask? And then I can answer that, and then they accept that.
So I believe that we have to end this transmission, but I want to ask you one thing. Tycker du att pandemin är slut, Wendy?
I've actually said this to my pupils. You'll know when the pandemic is over, when I feel that the pandemic is over, and I'll stop wearing my mask. Definitely.
Så jag tycker att vi ska ta på oss våra emotioner. Och jag har min FFP2 som är vitt och matchar bra med mina kläder idag. Du ser, såna här finns också i rosa, i svart. Jag har sett den i beige.
These are super comfortable because they wear over my head. And I look like a twat, but I don't care. I'd rather be a safe twat than a dead twat.
Ja, så vi avslutar för idag. Vi tackar alla som har varit med oss och vi hoppas att ni också börjar titta utomlands. Vad händer och vad andra skolor gör och andra lärargrupper, lärarföreningar eller vårdnadshavare i andra länder gör. Så att ni får inspiration i det och kanske ni hittar rätt väg. Så hej då! Och ha det så bra och ta det lugnt och ta hand om er. Be safe next week.
Be smart.
Hej då!
Hej då!